Hello, this is Ken. The following recording was produced live during the Southern California Nar-Anon Family Group's 2022 Narathon event entitled Finding Serenity, which was held in virtual format. This recording is intended to be in keeping with the guidelines and traditions of Nar-Anon family groups, which strives to protect the anonymity and confidentiality of each participant. As such, only the audio portions are available and members are identified by first names only. The stories you are about to hear are told in confidence and should not be repeated outside of the program, and this recording is fully protected by all copyright laws. The reproduction or unauthorized distribution of this recording or any of the content included is strictly prohibited. We share these stories and experiences so that we might better understand this program and ourselves, and to give encouragement and help to the new member. The SoCal region would like to express gratitude for the volunteer service committee that produced this event and who provided tech support. This includes our regional chair and host, Roxanne, as well as Dottie, Susan, and Ken. And as a reminder, this event is intended to be a fundraiser for the Nar-Anon Family Group's Southern California region, in keeping with our 7th tradition, which states, every group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. We gratefully accept contributions in any amount. Please visit our website at naranonsocal.org and click on the Donate button on the homepage. Use the comments dialog box to indicate if you are donating to our Narathon fundraiser. If you are donating on behalf of a group, please also include your group ID number and meeting name. Thank you, and enjoy the program.
So thank you again, everyone, for attending. If you would like to make a donation, please feel free to visit our website at naranonsocal.org, no dashes. You can click on the PayPal button there, which will be on the left side of your screen. You can also send a check-in if that's easier to our events treasurer, which is Susan S. Please text her what your pledge amount is. Her phone number is 949-872-3941. Again, that's 949-872-3941. When you text her the amount that you guys are pledging, she will respond back with the mailing address for you. Regardless of which way you choose to make a 7th tradition donation, please make sure that you include in the comments or the memo your meeting information, whether that's your meeting ID number or the name, time, and date of your meeting, so that way we can make sure that it gets credited to, correctly to the right meeting. Okay, so with that said, you may ask, where does the money go? Keeping in mind our 7th tradition, every group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. So our region budget is approved annually by the GSRs at our assembly. It includes allocations for our regional expenses associated with things such as Zoom membership, literature, conventions, new groups, Narateen, Narathon, outreach, PayPal website, our website platform, sending our delegates to the World Service Conference, and then, of course, our 7th tradition contributions to the World Service Office. So thank you so much for your ongoing support with that. Next, may I have a volunteer to read the prayer for the growth of our fellowship? This can be located in the sesh book on Roman numeral 4 or in the back of the booklet, the blue book on page 15.
Okay. I can do it for you, Roxanne.
Thank you, Ken.
Hello, I'm Ken. God, we thank you for the peace and serenity we are finding as we learn to put our addicts in your hands, one day at a time, and cease trying to change them. We are grateful that you helped us to find our way here, and we ask that you help those still alone and in pain because of the addiction of a friend or loved one. Please help them to find their way to these rooms so that we may give them back the gifts we've been so freely given, as well as give us a chance to share our experience, strength, and hope with those suffering the isolation created by living with an addict. As we try to reach out to others with our fellowship, help us to be ever mindful of our traditions. We are trusting in your love and concern for our addicts and us, and we ask that you help us to search always for your will for us and for those we care about.
Thank you so much, Ken. I'd like to say a special thank you to our trusted servants who served on this year's Narathon committee and worked diligently to put this program together. Speaker procurement was Dottie from the Mission Viejo group. She's also on the Southern California Region Outreach Chair, or she's the chair for the Outreach Committee. Tech support is Roseanne R. from Moreno Valley. She's the Southern California Region Secretary as well as the Outreach Committee member. Treasurer and speaker communication is Susan S. from Mission Viejo. She also does the take back to the meeting minutes for the Southern California region. Narateen speakers and tech support is Ken K. from Chatsworth. He's a Southern California Region website committee member as well as World Service Narateen Committee Vice Chair. Host, program, and flyer is myself. I'm the host for the Inland Empire Virtual Meeting Group, as well as the SoCal Region Chair and a member of the Southern California Region Outreach Committee. So as you guys can see, a lot of us hold multiple positions. We tend to be overworked and we need lots of people to step up and to be of service. Our next regional assembly will be coming up on October 8th at 10 a.m. Anyone can attend this meeting. It's the same login information as today. We can post that in the chat as well. Please keep in mind concept 4, effective leadership is highly valued in NarAnon. Leadership qualities should be carefully considered when selecting trusted servants. If you're interested in being of service, please reach out to me for additional information. Now for some quick housekeeping before we get started. All participants are to remain on mute during the event. Please keep movement to a minimum as not to be a distraction to others. If you do need to move around, just turn your camera off, please. You may list questions in the chat for the speakers, and if time permits at the end of them speaking, we will take Q&A, and then Ken will present the questions that were in the chat. If we don't have time, then after the call is ended, we will actually stay on for a little bit of additional Q&A afterwards. And then we will also post the emails in the chat for the speakers for post-communication follow-up if anybody would like to speak to them directly. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and get started with our first speaker. I would like to introduce Allison P. She's from the Mission Viejo group, and she has been with NarAnon for 10 years. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you, Roxanne. It's great to be here. Great to see everybody. And I'm really impressed with how well organized this whole program has been. So what I'm going to address in my minutes here is what I value most about NarAnon and you, all of you, each of you. And I will also touch on valuing serenity and creating serenity. So how many of you remember the Mickey Mouse Club? Anybody? Yay, I see some hands and head nods. It was on TV, I hate to say, many decades ago. And the child members of this club were called Mouseketeers. Growing up, I thought this club was the coolest thing ever. I was glued to the TV just to be sure to watch these kids every week. And more than anything, I wanted to be a member of this club. Well, there are still many possibilities of clubs to be a part of. There are book clubs. I'm a member of an online book club. We identify together collectively as readers. We share books. We read the same book at the same time, discuss it, and get ideas for new books. We give each other our own ways of doing and interpreting. And I love the common passion for sharing books among this group. One more group or club I participate in is a card club. 3 couples enjoy meeting at a restaurant for a pre-game dinner. We rotate hosting the card game, and the host has the all-important post-game dessert selection responsibility, and we end up playing for hours. And these monthly card games give us a social outlet as well as an opportunity for a little bit of gambling and some friendly rivalry. So I'm sure many of you on the call belong to a group or club, whether it's church or other places of worship, sports, hobbies. Well, each one of us on this call also belongs to an incredibly unique club. We may not, and likely didn't sign up for it. We may not have thought about it as a club. But when you have a loved one struggling with addiction and or mental illness, you meet the criteria for our very special club. My initial club membership began with my first husband. We were 20 and 24 when we married. Yes, pretty darn young. I won't go into detail on that story because he's been out of my life for almost 30 years. Sadly, he turned out to be a major active drug addict. And naively, I thought with every family milestone we hit, I thought, well, surely once we have a baby, and certainly once we have a second child, he'll stop. Or when one of our parents dies, that'll wake him up. Maybe if I divorce him, he'll stop. He never did quit. And I finally did see my way to a divorce. I had an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old at the time. And somehow I knew in my heart it would be easier to be a single mom than stayed married to my first husband. I was right. Today he's 70. And to this day, he's an active drug user. Kind of amazing he's alive. I've had many, many people tell me that. So the good news is I did remarry after 15 years of single parenting. I can guess I'm not alone in this dynamic with a second marriage and a drug problem in the family. The good news is also my second husband couldn't be further from being an addict. He's been very understanding and supportive of the struggles with addiction and mental health that my son has. My husband has treated my kids better than their own father ever did. Isn't that sad? Ever did. He's never been there for his kids. And I just step aside and think, because I happen to be the luckiest person on the planet. I think I won the lottery in the bad department, and to see my kids suffer with who I picked for their dad is very painful. And I can't even imagine how painful it is for my kids. So after my divorce, raising my kids, I was a huge anti-drug advocate. I figured I'd get to them through education. So we marched in every red ribbon anti-drug parade, the three of us, every single year for a decade. For those of you who don't know the Red Ribbon program, it's the nation's oldest and largest drug prevention awareness program. It started after a DEA agent was murdered when he was doing an investigation of drug traffickers in Mexico. And after his death, people started wearing red ribbons to honor his sacrifice. Today, millions of people celebrate Red Ribbon Week each year and pledging to live drug-free lives. So innocently, I thought, if I raise my 2 kids with anti-drugs as a family value, we would avoid the destructive path of addiction their father took. I just thought, give them information. And I just knew our lives were on track now. Then, out of the blue, my son, who was age 13 at the time, again qualified me for our special club membership here at Nar-Anon when I received a call from the school principal, 8th grade, that he had been caught on the campus with drugs. And I literally could not believe it. Literally, I told the principal, no, you've got the wrong mom. You've got the wrong kid. We march in the Red Ribbon Week every year. We're very anti-drug. And she assured me that not only did she have the right kid, but I better get over to the school because he's being suspended. So that started our journey. 13 years old he was, and now he is 33. For 20 years, he's been in and out of jail. He's been homeless. He has even had a few bouts with sobriety. He has OD'd several times, and one time he had to be revived with not one, but 2 doses of Narcan. I didn't even know they could do 2. I thought one was it. And luckily that cop decided, let's give him another dose. So this kid has had and used up more lives than a cat. And thankfully, I haven't even had a tiny little fraction of his life experiences. And I'm exactly twice his age. And I love him. I love him dearly. Sometimes he'll share a life experience that he's had with me, and all I can say is, really? That happened to you? Someone did that, said that, you saw that, whatever it was, it's shocking to me. This is a new world for me. Along the way, he has also been diagnosed with a serious mental illness, so he double qualifies us for this club with a dual diagnosis. Twice the challenges for him and for his loved ones, believe me. And again, I love him with all my heart. As I reflect on my membership in our exclusive club, NarAnon, I try really hard to look for the positives. There are many positives, although at times super hard to find, right? There is great value in us coming together, whether it's here or regular meetings, to find support and even a bit of serenity, whether it's by Zoom or in person. And again, while we may not have initially chosen membership in our club, we do choose to come together now. We create shared hope as we speak our stories, our truth, and listen to others speak theirs. I feel like NarAnon it's my people. If you know what I mean. NarAnon members are my people. So I truly value the safe environment and this shared connection that we all have. It was so nice to reunite as we all logged on with my home club. I haven't been attending due to COVID risk, but it's just so nice. And I really, really value the people I have met on this journey. And some have even become friends outside of NarAnon. What do you value in the groups you participate in? What do you value about NarAnon? What keeps you going back? I have experienced walking into a meeting with so much stress that my shoulders are so tense, they're almost touching my ears. And I remember walking out of that meeting relaxed with a serenity that can only be experienced in a group of my peers who really, really understand the burden of loving an addict. I can't say it enough. I do love my son. Again, I look for positives. It's always been a part of my personality to do that. So thankfully, being positive has kept me going during the roughest time. I may not have chosen membership in this club, but along the way and over time, I began to realize benefits I have gained as a member. And that's why I'm going to keep my connection to this club. We can help each other get through this incredibly difficult life challenge we've each been given. I honestly cannot just wait. From my experiences with the active addicts in my family, for example, one thing I've learned is great compassion for all human beings. And I realize every single one of us, every single human being has their own challenges. Loving an addict or addicts happens to be one of ours. I've also learned to withhold judgment of people I meet and I know in life. We never know anyone's whole story and what troubles they may be going through behind closed doors. Many of my work clients and work associates would never guess what my life challenges have been. Many would be shocked. Another thing I've learned is what a real problem is versus a small issue. Many people get upset over such small things. And those of us who love addicts can put those kind of problems in perspective. I've learned over the years, very few issues are real.
Allison, you accidentally muted yourself.
How long ago did I do
No.
that?
Just a couple seconds ago.
Okay, I'll keep hands off. So did you hear the part about my clients have no idea what's going on this side of my life? Okay, I have grown immensely from my experiences with the active addicts in my family. I've learned great compassion for all human beings. And I realize every single one of us, every single person has their own challenges. Loving an addict or addicts happens to be ours. I have also learned to withhold judgment of people I meet and I know in life. We never know anyone's whole story and what troubles they may be going through behind their closed doors. Many of my clients and work associates would never guess what my life challenges have been, and I think they would be shocked. Another thing I've learned is what a real problem is versus a small issue. Many people get upset over such small things. Those of us who love addicts can put problems in perspective. I've learned over the years that there are very few issues that are really problems to worry about. Most of the biggies have to do with my son and his decisions and his actions. To quote an old saying, remember the book, "Don't sweat the small stuff"? I think that's one of the benefits we probably all have learned through this program and with our ones. And I don't sweat the small stuff. I'm not going to waste a minute of my life doing that. The ups and downs of our qualifiers' lives creates a roller coaster effect in ours. Even when things are going well for them, yay, we reserve this piece of our heart to protect ourselves in case they fail again, which has been a very long-term pattern with my son. We just don't allow ourselves to celebrate fully. Sober relapse, over and over. I learned there's a term for it. It's called chronic relapse. The good and sad news is that each of you are not alone. We're not alone. I'm not alone. And our loved ones are not alone. We have each other. And that in itself brings me some serenity. It's very hard to open your heart in the outside world, outside of this safe bubble of NarAnon. Non-club members may not listen or listen with real, true understanding. And we often worry about fear of judgment, right? That's why I've never really talked about this stuff with work people, never. So in our club, we can release the fear of judgment. We understand at a level that other people can't. And we can come together in this common experience. We create understanding and support for ourselves, for each other, and for our loved ones. Again, I suggest you take this opportunity to reflect about what keeps you coming back to NarAnon. You can decide for yourself, what value does this group offer you? What value can you contribute to our club? Many of you are doing a lot of service work. That's phenomenal. What proves valuable that keeps you coming back? Let's revisit and freshen those values regularly for ourselves. It's so good to know we're not alone. And here are some of the things I value about our special exclusive club. I get compassion from others who really get it. I'm not ever alone. During the challenges that happen when we love an addict, we can feel quite lonely. I have felt lonely. That's when I reach out to a Nar-Anon buddy for a call or a text. By the end of that call, I have released some stress. I have been supported and validated, and my load is somehow lighter, my life more serene. Once again, it literally changes in the course of a conversation. Being in a safe group. In life, we rarely have a group of people we can easily open up to in complete honesty without holding back, or who we can listen to and identify closely with. This is a gift, and I don't take it lightly. We have the ability at NarAnon to be open about our deepest battles. In the NarAnon world, most of us share how our loved ones struggle over the years and the ongoing impact it has had on our families' lives. I know NarAnon people will listen and not judge. That's invaluable to me. To be respectfully listened to and understood without judgment is also a gift, and I treasure it. And acceptance. My NarAnon family just gets it. Some additional truisms I've found in NarAnon meetings, and what keeps me coming back, is that it's a very safe space. It's open and friendly to everyone. It's a welcoming atmosphere, pleasant, warm, with down-to-earth, good, genuine people. There's a connection. It's priceless. And then the moms. And sorry to those who are not moms on the call. I don't mean to exclude you, but I came across this quick little story, and I wanted to share it with you. It was copied from a NarAnon blog. Fathers, siblings, wives, husbands, girlfriends, and boyfriends all take a stand and join the group. Largely, the number one role represented in our group is mothers. From changing diapers to packing up for college, the mothers have been there for every moment of their child's life. And when addiction impacts their daughter or son, they are the ones affected the most. If you are new to NarAnon, you might be figuring this information out right now. If you've been a longtime club member and have been on this roller coaster a while, you may have more answers for yourself. When I started making notes for this talk, my son was freshly released from jail and was going to a court-ordered 90-day rehab program. After successful completion, his jail record was going to be wiped clean. It's like a 1 in a million opportunity. And again, I was at the top of the roller coaster. What an opportunity. On August 20th, he relapsed again. We're not in touch at that time. His next probation visit is scheduled for August 21, and I don't even know if he'll make that appointment, which was to make the rehab arrangements. Once again, I'm at the bottom of the roller coaster. Here, it's August 31st, and I'm updating these notes. He's now living with us. He has not lived with us for a long time, but we decided to invite him in with a very short leash until he can get into the 90-day rehab. We didn't want to lose track of him. We wanted him in that rehab. So thankfully, he got into the rehab on September 7th. I was going to say August 7th. It was September 7th, and I'm hopeful he will once again choose recovery for himself. As of today, he's still at the rehab. He hasn't left. Top of the roller coaster. My fingers are crossed he'll make the 90 days and embrace treatment, choose sobriety. Again, the roller coaster creaks and rolls on. How do we live our lives, go about our work, socialize, do our daily activities with this agony and torment hanging over our heads? I don't know about you, but I've always wondered, did I do enough? Did I do too much? Did I somehow cause or enable his addiction? deep down, I believe and have almost really accepted the fact there's nothing I could have done to affect his choices. And NarAnon was a big help in getting me there. And I really did try everything I could for decades. Lawyers, treatment, counseling, psychologists, assessments, residential care, therapy, hovering over him, backing away from him, constantly available in case he needed me, and the money. When I think of the money I've dished out over the years, trying to keep him alive. As his mother, I feel worried and haunted by his addiction. I have even almost accepted the fact that my child may die from an overdose at any time. I mean, a double dose of Narcan is pretty darn close. And he's had Narcan before that too. Sometimes, and may God forgive me for saying this, and I'm saying it in front of all of you, I think if he did pass away, it would be easier for him and me. He'd finally be at peace, something I don't think he ever experiences, and so would I. That last statement is very hard to admit, but here in my NarAnon group, I can say it. So how do I deal with this decades-long, tiring, nonstop, devastating roller coaster ride? I reach out to you, our club members. I get support, love, goosebumps that I'm getting right now, understanding and insight by talking with the fellowship of those who are on this roller coaster ride with me. I connect with you, those who listen with understanding, not judgment. Over the years, you've all been my life support. When I think of what I value about being a part of this journey with all of you, the words of a poem, which I'll close with, epitomizes it far better than I can. Thank you, my NarAnon family. You're the ones who give me comfort, and for being the ones who accept my life without judgment, who have provided me with the most beautiful gift of serenity when I needed it most. Please know I'm also there for each of you, as all of us are for each other. This relationship that we have is what I value most about our club. Our community dedicated to helping each other. Thank you for being a part of it. Together, we really are stronger. So it's a brief poem. It was written in 1826. This woman wrote a book about friendship, Dinah Craik. And this poem struck me as what NarAnon provides. Remember, early 1800s. Here it goes. Oh, the comfort, the inexpressible comfort of feeling safe with a person, having neither to weigh thoughts nor measure words, but pouring them all right out, just as they are, the chaff and grain together, certain that a faithful hand will take and sift them, keep what's worth keeping, and then with the breath of kindness, blow the rest away. And that's what I feel about NarAnon. So thank you all for being a part of our community and for letting me speak.
Thank you so much, Allison. We do
You're
have
welcome.
about 2 minutes. Did we have any questions in the chat, Ken?
I don't, there was a whole bunch of activity just now, but I don't see any. But now is the time to ask questions if you do. You can ask it in chat, or you could ask it, raise your hand and we'll call on you.
I'm getting direct messages about the Mission Viejo meeting, and I don't know how to provide that. Was that on the, Luz, thank you so much. Oh my
I
God.
sent it directly to Roxanne. I don't know why it went to you. This is
Okay.
Andy. And it says direct message to Roxanne. So
Oh, I
interesting.
didn't get one from you. No. I'm
Okay,
looking
thank
at the
you.
chat.
Sorry.
But that's okay.
If anybody's interested in finding a particular meeting, you can find it on the SoCal NarAnon website. You can also find it on the World Service website as well. But all of the ones in Southern California are listed. There's both a calendar and a listing of all the meetings by location, if you'd like to look by location.
And I'm happy to take emails from anybody who'd like to follow up. So I don't know if that was in the materials or not, Brian.
If we can post your email in the chat.
Right. And I also see a question from Luz. She's asking, where do you get your strength from?
You know what? And that's a great question. I think innately, I was the oldest kid. I've always been kind of a strong person. But when it comes to life or death, which is what it is for many of our loved ones when they're messing around with this stuff, it puts everything in perspective. And to me, life and death is the one that rises and that really commands attention. Everything else I can step back, breathe, look at and say, what's the big deal? Really, what's the big deal? So I don't know if that directly answered, but you're welcome to reach out to me. And oh, thanks, Jen. I will put my email up right now. I'm happy to take emails if I can be of any help to anybody else.
Thank you so much, Allison. Let's give her another round of virtual applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
With that, we'll go ahead and we'll move to our next speaker. It's my pleasure to introduce Jason P. He's from the San Juan Capistrano meeting, and he's been with us for 18 months. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. It's an honor to be here. I want to thank Dottie. She, after a meeting at San Juan, one day she cornered me and said, "Hey, would you like to speak at Narathon?" I didn't realize it was going to be like so formal, so I was a little bit nervous at this after finding out the format. So I'm going to do my best here. Anyways, I'm going to start off kind of with with my analogy of, I don't know, can you read this? The storm?
Yes.
That's where we'll start my story. You know, in my mind, things seemed very typical with my teenage son. And, you know, he was a boy, and I didn't, you know, really understand the music he liked or the kind of culture he was living. And I figured that was typical of a father and a teenage son's relationship. There's a generational gap, and that's pretty normal. Some of the things, however, I did relate to, and oddly enough, it was, you know, his love of skateboarding and his participation in sports. I could relate to those things, and I you know, those are some of the things that I enjoyed growing up. So we had some connection there. But I was in denial because, you know, things seemed to be normal for me. You know, his you know, as a young teenager, his hanging out with friends and smoking pot and getting in a little bit of trouble and still managing to do well in school was, for me, kind of normal. And it wasn't until I got into the Nar-Anon program and started reflecting on some of my own experiences growing up that I realized that my perceptions were a little bit skewed. You know, as opposed to our first speaker, Allison's experience, mine was very different. You know, I grew up in a family where drug abuse or drug use was very common. Marijuana was in the house. It was grown in the backyard. It was part of just my childhood. But at the same time, I felt very loved, had a very stable home and a very outside of the doors, normal functioning home. And I think part of that, I felt like those experiences, it seemed to make it easy for me to deny an existing problem with my son. I also, but through the program, I learned that those views and whatever I had didn't really cause the problem. But, in reflection, it was kind of, it kind of became important to me in my own recovery. And I think that's part of, taking an inventory, is what NarAnon calls it, is I started looking at my own life and how, how it's going to, help me grow moving forward into my own recovery. Well, so the next part we got was, I think, confusion. I know I keep ditching out, but the confusion happens when my disease started to get worse. I got more into denial. I became more of an enabler, more of a rescuer. And it coincided with the same time of my son's disease getting worse. This was probably about December 2019. I started finding him nodding out. And he's also doing a lot less of the activities that he used to do. It was noticeable. His regular group of friends that he hung out with, they're not around very often. He's not with them very often. He did have one other friend that he started hanging out with a lot. And, obviously that was because they were both doing the same thing. And so with that, my suspicion started to grow, and I thought it was prescription pills. And I thought, okay, this is, in my mind, that's a serious drug problem and needs to be addressed. So I took it upon myself and my wife, and we're like, okay, we're going to start drug testing him. And, there had been times during the years where we had, he had gotten in trouble, and we're like, no more, we're going to drug test you, blah, blah, blah. And we would just kind of like let it, fizzle out over a little while. But at this time we started drug testing him, and he was compliant, and the drug tests are coming back just positive for THC, which I thought, I was still kind of in that mode of like, well, it's not a dangerous drug. But the confusion there was, I'm finding him nodding out, and I'm sitting there thinking that's a symptom of something definitely different than THC use. So it wasn't making sense, and then I find out, the 12-panel drug test was tested all kinds of things, but opioids were on there, meth, all the recreational drugs and so on. But the one thing that wasn't on there was fentanyl. And I didn't realize that, but I'm sure my son started to realize that, because nothing else was showing up. So then there's this brief moment of clarity, I guess, in this storm in the beginning, and it was a family vacation we took. And the first night we were on vacation, my son, we brought along his buddy. We were on a camping trip. And the first night, sitting at the table, the kid practically falls on the floor, nodding out. And, so this alarm goes off in my head, like, okay, you guys are up to something. It was a confrontation. It was like, okay, so what's happening? And then he admits what they're doing and what they're using. And at that time, I thought, wow, you know what? I can control this. So we get home, and from the vacation, it wasn't really much of a vacation, but we got home, and we, we're like, okay, I need to take control of this. I'm a dad. It's a different perception of being a mom, I think, but I'm a dad. I can fix this. I'm going to put it on my shoulders and, get my toolbox, and I'm going to fix this problem. And so we're calling, I know he needs help. He's even saying, yes, I need help. So I'm thinking, okay, we're in this together. This is great. So we go through this whole process. I'm sure everyone's familiar with, finding the rehab. He's still a minor, and getting him in there. And this is right, at the height of COVID, the summer of 2020. It was a miracle that we even found a place that had a bed, that we found a place that gave him a test. And the fact that he wasn't in full withdrawal yet because he was still using secretly. And I was able to get him in the car and drive him there and drop him off. And it's like, that was this weird feeling of, I got it, I did my part. I'm a hero. I Dad fixed it. I got him there. And that's when the real like despair happens, right? So it doesn't work, obviously. Comes home and he starts using, and I'm a failure. And so I'm in this point where and it's weird because looking back now, it's like if I told someone this story that's not in the program, they'd think, wow, man, problem solved. They'd be cheering, like, you did this all on your own, Dad, like you're fixing it. And at the time, that's what was in my head. And because I wasn't in the Nar-Anon program at all yet, I was still thinking that I could do this on my own. But the despair happened at that point. And I don't know if you saw on my sign here, my post-it, there's some railroad tracks. And so I was feeling so horrible. And I thought, the only way I can, that I knew how to help myself was exercise, right? Like the stress is there and all this. So I'm exercising and going for walks daily and, walking 3 miles, 4 miles, lunch break, taking a walk. Well, one of the routes I walks beside these railroad tracks. And I'm watching these freight trains roll down the track, and my mind starts going to these horribly dark places where I'm sitting there thinking, I'm in such a bad spot. I'm start to have suicide ideation about the relief it would bring to kill myself. And so this brings me to an alarming situation where I'm thinking, I've never had those thoughts before. I've never gone to a place that dark in my life. And so that's when I finally get back to work and I log in, I go, I need help, right? And I found a meeting. Because I was seriously insane at that point, I thought. And because I thought I'd been doing all of these things that should be working and should be helping, and it just made me sicker and sicker. And that's where I think we get to the part of the story where the rescue comes, right? And the rescue was, I logged into a meeting in Fountain Valley. It was like March, I think 2021. It was about 18 months ago exactly. And the instant relief was amazing. And I still get choked up over it because I felt such an acceptance right from the get-go. And, that's thanks to this program and the people in it, because they all knew right away what I was feeling. And they brought me in and I felt such an amazing amount of relief, even through Zoom. It was a Zoom meeting and I was sitting at home and it was still there. I still felt it. And I couldn't, at that point, I'm like, okay, that was a great feeling. I need more of this. I have to get more. And so I found a meeting in person in San Juan Capistrano that was meeting, and it's called a parent focused meeting. So I thought, oh, that's great. There are other parents like me. I showed up at that one. And again, so I started kind of just immersing myself in the meetings. And I found some relief. The relief was that there were other people there that felt what I felt, that had been to where I was, and they were feeling pretty good. And so I was like, wow, this is what I need. This is like the club, like Allison said, this is the club. This is where this is a new club I feel good in. I feel like I belong here. And I started to think of the word serenity. I started saying the prayer. I never said the prayer really before, but we were saying it at the beginning. We were saying it at the end, and I found myself saying it in the car driving, and in my day-to-day life. I was starting to pray and say this prayer, and it was giving me hope. And finding serenity, I feel like I'm still in the point where I'm seeking serenity. I'm in the boat rowing, trying to find serenity. It was told to me one way, someone described it like there's this lifeboat, and in my picture there, my drawings showed a lifeboat, and as I'm like in the ocean, in the storm, waving my hands, going, help, here comes this lifeboat rowing up, and these people pull you in and they say, okay, grab an oar and start rowing. And you just start rowing, it's like that, like, I don't know where we're going. But you have to do something, and you have to keep moving and working towards, finding serenity. And so I feel like that initial feeling of finding a meeting and making a decision to attend a meeting and keep coming back was me getting in that boat and grabbing an oar and keep rowing. And keep coming back is the part, it's like, it's the part you got to keep pulling on the oar each time. The boat's not going to go anywhere unless you do something. And so, yes, I had some hope, right? We're getting to hope. The step, the steps, I was introduced to these steps, and at the time I'm sitting there thinking, this is not, how is this going to help, my son? But at the same time, it was like, I was in such despair. I was kind of like over that. I was kind of like, I need some help for me because I'm struggling here. My life was totally unmanageable. I was completely powerless over the addict and addiction. I had that perception of control and that feeling of failure because I thought I could control it. I thought I should be able to control it, and I couldn't. Brought this feeling of failure to me. And so I was completely, out of control. But for the first time, I started to consider the idea of a higher power. Religion and spirituality wasn't part of my life. It wasn't there, but it's like that saying, nobody's an atheist at the bottom of a foxhole. It's like that was my moment. It was like I needed to look somewhere and find that spirituality and that higher power, because it was in a moment of despair that I needed it. And so I started working the steps. I started reading about them. I started thinking, when I'm not at meetings, thinking about the steps. I got the literature, Seeking Serenity, Finding Serenity. I started reading the pamphlets. I got the sesh book, and it was one of those moments where when the whole thing's happening, I have this great marriage. My wife is, not in the program initially with me, and she was okay with that. I was okay with that because I felt she was in a different place. But the sesh book's laying around, and she sees, I think she noticed changes in me, and she then, starts reading the sesh book. She then looks up and finds a meeting, and she starts attending the meeting and starts on her own recovery. And it was just one of those moments where things kind of came together in our family, where we each took our own path to get into NarAnon. But thank goodness we both got there. It was, and I didn't push her in, she didn't push me in. It was just, and I think that's a good lesson for other people, because sometimes we, as we think we know best, we think we know what other people should be doing. And people find their own way. They find their own way here, or they don't, but I'm grateful now that we both did. It's made a huge difference in our life and our family. But things were still difficult. We needed boundaries. So, and that was part of the good thing about my wife and I. We both found the program because we then became able. It was easier for us together to set the boundaries and to understand why we needed boundaries, because we were still living with active addiction in our house. And even though I was, starting to feel some recovery, it was still there. It was still like that door in the back bedroom. There was a storm inside there. I could kind of close the door, but it was still there. And you could hear the thunder, and it was a mess. So I guess the boundary part was huge, and we had some help because we we were good manipulators at the time, and we were able to kind of manipulate a situation into where it became, my son moved out to go to college, and we both knew that probably wasn't going to be successful, but he was out the door. And once he got out the door, it was like we changed the locks, and it was like, whatever happens in college happens there, but he's not coming back. And so it was a different way to set a boundary. It wasn't like, hey man, get out. It was like, hey, look, you can go live in college for a little while, and then you can't come back. And it's happened over the course of last year. So the boundary part was, it was different, but it definitely helped when that active addiction left the house. We began to get better, much better. And then, I realized that for my recovery, I needed a sponsor. So this is where I think this is one of the things that was really difficult for me, because, and I don't mean to like throw the gender issue in there, but I'm a guy, I'm a dad, I don't need help. I'm not going to ask for help. I'm not going to ask for directions. I'm not going to ask how I can figure this shit out on my own, but I'd been to enough meetings. I had listened enough that I thought, you know what, maybe they're right. Maybe this thing about a sponsor is an important step to recovery. And it was hard for me. It was one of the most difficult things at the time that I had done, is to stop a friend and say, hey, would you be my sponsor? And it was just like, and afterwards it's like, oh yeah, absolutely, come on, let's go have coffee. And it was just like, again, this massive sigh of relief that like, wow, that's okay. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to reach out to other people and say, look, how would you do this? This is what's going on. So the sponsor part has really helped. And, it's also reminded me and nudged me to keep working the steps, to keep rowing the boat, not just be satisfied with like steps 1 through 3, but here's some work to do next. This is what we need to do together to keep moving forward. And I'm not doing it. I don't think I'm at a record pace in working the steps by any means. But I do feel confident that I'm moving forward, and I keep growing. Taking that inventory of myself was very important. Making the list, which is about where I am right now in my step progress, was huge. And I need to just keep at that. And now we get to the sharks. This is my last card, the sharks. So throughout this whole thing, my son ended up homeless over the past few months, and has managed to to detach and tell him when I saw him that I loved him, and just leave it at that. I love you. I hope you're safe. And there were no big outbursts or fights or anything like that. That didn't happen. But he suffered. We suffered, because I knew that living on the streets is not easy. And I worried, I knew that, at any time he could end up on the wrong side of death. And he came to us about a month ago, and, he texted and said, hey, can I talk to you guys? And at that moment, it was weird because I had been relatively anxiety free, but when he asked for recovery and asked for help getting into recovery, it created a new set of anxiety for me, anxieties, I guess, because all of a sudden, this is a great thing, right? I should be celebrating, woohoo, victory, right? But I didn't feel that at all. I just felt like okay, you know, this is your thing, right? And it was a completely opposite feeling from 2 years previously when we got him in the rehab the first time and that whole fiasco. I felt, you know, elated and all this other feelings. Now I was pretty even keeled, which I think is part of, you know, recovery in the program in Nar-Anon, is the fact that I've managed to detach myself a little bit from the life of the addict and their ups and downs. But there was still some anxiety, and I started to think about it. And as he's in this program, I'm telling myself, what I have this feeling like I need to stay out of the way. I need to stay away from his recovery. I can't get involved. And I explained it to my wife one day. I go, you know, I feel like the closer I get to him, the more I'm like, it's like the sharks are circling this island, right? And he's found himself on an island now. He got, you know, his shipwreck storm, whatever it is, he's now found this island of relief in his recovery program in the initial stages. But if I get close to him, it's like these sharks are just circling this island, and I'm going to lead them right back to him. And I know I don't know how that works moving forward, but I feel like at this point, if I kind of stay out of his business and what he's doing, the better. You know, it's going to make, you know, I think my getting close to him is going to make things worse. So I've been focusing on that, and then, you know, my own recovery, and part of that is, you know, stepping outside of your comfort zone once in a while, and volunteering to speak at Narathon to a bunch of strangers. So I appreciate everybody listening to my story and bearing with my hurricane analogies. Anyways, I think I may have cut it a little short, but I don't have any more to say right now. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Jason. Everybody give him a round of applause. We do have a couple minutes. We have like 3 minutes to have any questions. Was there anything in the chat?
I haven't seen anything in the chat. I will say I love the flashcards. We actually have in our Chatsworth group, one of our longtime members, her small child, heard her saying these slogans over and over, and he made flashcards to contribute to our group. So we use them frequently and we love them. But I'll also point out for the literature that there is a book called Sharing the Slogans, and I'm having a hard time showing it on the screen, but it is approved, conference approved literature for anybody who wants to participate in that, or to read more about the slogans and what they actually mean. And also the Lit Committee has put out announcements recently that they are looking for contributions, the Serenity Connection and other publications that come out. So that's on the main website. If you want to submit something to the Literature Committee, I'm sure they'd appreciate that.
Thank you. And yes, Jason, I loved all of your analogies. I can just picture me being in the boat, and that's my program. And then bam, I hit a rock. Oh, that's me enabling. So now I got a little crack in my boat. So finding strength from my higher power and from my group helps to patch that hole back up. So it kind of was just a new perspective for me. So I appreciate that.
And Jason Luce is asking, do you meditate? And if you do you find it helpful?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I exercise and I meditate. I don't meditate on a regular basis, but I do some yoga, and with the meditation that's involved in yoga, it is very helpful. And yeah, so yes.
I'm glad you also mentioned about sponsorship. I know that men in particular are having trouble because there's not enough men sponsors. So hopefully you are considering being a sponsor, and other men and women who are interested in sponsors or sponsoring should reach out, because it's an important part of the recovery.
Absolutely. For those of us who have been around a while, we are here to give back what was so freely given to us.
Yes.
If we only come when we're in turmoil and trouble, then there's no one here sharing the hope part of it. So make sure that you guys keep coming. So with that said, I don't think we have any other questions. Thank you for sharing. Pacific Northwest region has a men's group.
I've attended that.
Excellent. All right. So with that said, I guess we're right on time. We'll go ahead and move on. I'll introduce our next speaker. So our next speaker is Ashley LB. She's from the Laguna Hills area. She has 16 years in a 12-step program. And we would like to welcome her as our guest speaker.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Thumbs up. Okay, awesome. All right. Well, my children, my twin 5-year-old boys have been told, do not come in here. But we'll see how well my husband and the children figure out those instructions. So my name is Ashley, and I am an alcoholic and an addict, and I could probably belong to almost any 12-step program that I set my heart and mind to. And that's kind of the basis of who I am. And I've been clean and sober since January 7th of 2006. It took me many years to get that sobriety date. And when I got that sobriety date, I was 19 years old. So I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. My parents are from the East Coast. My mom is a New England WASP. My father is New York Jew. And so it's a very interesting household that I grew up in. And I went to 8 years of Catholic school. So the God stuff was a very difficult piece for me. It was very confusing. And I experienced childhood sexual trauma when I was 5. And I say that because it's part of my story. And I don't think that it's what made me an alcoholic or a drug addict, but I do think that it contributed to my path. And one of the pieces that has become really apparent in my story over many, many years of treatment and therapy has been that the trauma wasn't for me. What I experienced as trauma was not the actual event, but it was how it was handled when I came out with it. And so that's something that does involve my family. When I told my family about what happened, they found it incredibly difficult to believe. And so they really said, basically, we don't think that that's could have happened. And, but you should talk to a counselor about it. And the counselor that I spoke to about it ended up causing a whole bunch of problems. And long and short is that I was taken into that Catholic school principal's office and told that I needed to take it back, that I needed to recant. And I was talking to my dad the other day about something related to this, and he was saying, we had no idea, we had no skills, we had no idea of how to handle these things. And I think that's one of the big differences between a lot of parents and people who are in a program like Nar-Anon or Al-anon or any of the family programs is there's no skills, there's no one to talk to. And people, when you're in one of these 12-step programs, you get to feed off of everybody else's advice and experience, which is such an incredible thing. And unfortunately, that experience for me was very, very damaging. And my belief from that experience was that I was alone in the world and that I needed to take care of myself. And while, yes, I was 9 and I lived in my parents' home, that I was my own responsibility. That was how my child mind really absorbed what had happened. And from there, my first drug of choice was sugar. And I would eat sugar, I was eat sugar out of the cabinets, out of, find it wherever I could. I was very interested in the process of getting it, hiding it, all the things that come along that today we know look very much like, coping and some sort of addiction. And eventually that changed into more of bigger coping skills. I think I had my first drink at 7, and I stole a beer and hid it in a closet. It took me a week to finish. And I wasn't a daily drinker at 7, but that was the first time. And I didn't do it because I thought I was going to get drunk. I did it because I knew I wasn't supposed to do it. So that was my intention, was do something you're not supposed to do. And, as the years went on, I in middle school, by the time I was in 8th grade, I was drinking regularly. I had been smoking weed. Excuse me. I had been smoking weed and doing cocaine. And I want to say that I went to a Catholic private school. I had great grades. I came from a well-educated, good family, 2 younger siblings. So people knew that I was troubled, so to speak, but there was not, I didn't fit into, I played all sports. I didn't fit into the category of what it was to look like, just some drug addict, right? Like that's not what it looked like. It wasn't an easy pinpoint. And my parents, growing up in the 70s, their experience was that they could party and do drugs, and they did very well for themselves. And they grew up in New York City. They lived in New York City in the 80s, and they had their life together. And so for them, they looked at it as like, okay, well, yes, she's doing these things, but she also has great grades. She's going, she plays all these sports. She has her shit together. And that was, I understood from my parents that if I looked like I had my shit together, that they would leave me alone on a lot of other things. That deteriorated. And by the time I was 15, when I was 15, that was the first time I shot heroin. I was terrified of needles. And the only reason that I did that was that I had started dating a guy who, it turned out was a heroin addict, which I didn't know when we started dating. And we were drunk, and I got curious. Had you told me when I was younger that this would have been the path, not only would I not have believed it, but nobody else would have believed it either. It felt so improbable. Looking back, I can connect the dots looking backwards, but really, truly, I was not that kid. And then I became that kid. And then, you were talking, I heard the speaker before me talking about, homelessness and all these things. And, so that was 15. By the time I was 15 and a half, I had left all the sports. I was in an alternative high school. I was basically not coming home anymore. It was total huge transition to completely falling apart. And by the time I was 16, I was a ward of the state of California. I was pregnant, homeless, and living in East Palo Alto, which in the 90s was not a good thing. Now it's a whole different story, but, and I was living with my boyfriend, who was 15 years older than me. And so, and my parents, it's interesting when we, again, looking back, when I talked to them about these things, one of the things, when I went to treatment, I went to a lot of different treatment centers. And when I went to treatment, one of the times that we had these family sessions, they asked my parents, they confronted my parents, because my parents at one point were so afraid that I was not coming home. They didn't know where I was, that they let the boyfriend, the older boyfriend, move into the house. And the therapists at the treatment center were like, why would you ever, like, how could you do that? And my parents said, we knew the only way she would come home is if he was in the house. And so otherwise we didn't know if she was alive or dead. And, I remember as a teenager, in those moments, hearing those things, and they were completely accurate. They were right. Not until I had my own children did I understand what a horrible position that must have been or felt like, not only having been someone who is in the grips of this disease, but also having a husband who's sober and us procreating and having 2 children, and passing these genetics on. Did I really understand like what position I put my family in? But I will tell you that at the time, the only thing I knew or understood was my own pain. That was the only thing I could feel. I could not feel outside of my own grief and pain and anger. And for me, my sadness was rage, and it turned into rage, and it was raging in the house, and it was raging outside of the house. And I knew that my rage could control the family, could change the family dynamic, that the biggest, loudest, scariest person in the house had the most power. I understood intuitively a lot of these things, and I used that to control the family system. And I did it not because I don't love my family. I love them very, very much, but that I was not the person that I am when I'm sober. It really feels to me, and I used to think this before I came to terms with being an addict and an alcoholic. I used to think that I was possessed or something, that something came over me, that there was some sort of possession that changed me into this other person that I didn't recognize and other people didn't recognize. And I now understand that is the disease. The disease will protect itself at all costs. My parents put me in a lot of different programs. They started putting me in programs when I was a minor, because I became a ward of the state of California. But at the time, if you had resources, you could get you could put your kid in another state and they wouldn't come after you for doing that. And so my parents and I had a 10 felony case and all sorts of stuff going on. And so my parents flew me to this lockdown place and in Utah, and I stayed there for 10 months. And, update on that, one of the interesting things about that, of course, is my parents hired the best therapists and educational consultants and all the things and did what they were told. And, what they didn't know was that kids were being funneled into these programs, that a lot of these programs were really horrible and abusive. And it was kind of like pulling a kid out of a bad home and putting them into a bad foster home. It was kind of like that. And so, many, many years, over 20 years later, the place that I went to for 9 months is, I was asked to testify in a class action lawsuit against abuses, in January. So that gives you an idea of like how well that worked out. And so I got out of there and was not feeling so great, but had been, sober for 9 months and had been introduced to 12-step, and immediately went and started drinking immediately, and got loaded and ended up overdosing. And my overdose was very dramatic. In May 17th of 2004, I overdosed in my childhood bedroom, and my parents found me blue, CPR, Narcan, the whole thing. And I think that was the first time that my parents really understood that this was like truly, truly life and death, and that nothing else mattered besides preserving life, like absolutely nothing. And my mom always talks about how I grew up in Silicon Valley, and so a lot of what was going on was like, where are your kids going to college? What are your kids doing? And she would talk about the conversations that other parents were having, and how she had this friend who called and said, like, it's a disaster. My daughter didn't get into her first choice school, but she got into her second choice school. And my mom, she's like, it was everything I could do to be like, that's not a disaster. Like, that's not an emergency, And she said, the world is different when you have a child who has a fatal problem. And of course, I was like, you're just embarrassed that I didn't, do what that was what I thought. You're just embarrassed, and I'm not like your friends' kids. And you're embarrassed of me. And I wasn't around for a lot of the psychological changes that they went through in these periods of time. And just like to pass over this piece, which is like, I was kidnapped twice. I overdosed. I was homeless. I went to 7 different programs. I've been in every type of care that exists, everything from psych ward to 30-day luxury residential, the whole gamut. And I got sober at 19, and I didn't get sober in treatment. I went to all that treatment so that I could relapse and not get sober in treatment. I got sober in AA in Prescott, Arizona. I was living there by myself, and, it was finally enough for me. That was, I don't know what else to say. It was finally enough for me. I was finally like, none of it works. I kept trying to prove that I was a drug addict and not an alcoholic. That was the thing that kept me going out. I was like, okay, I will concede I cannot use drugs like a normal person. I will not concede that the alcohol is the same. And so that was what kept me on that merry-go-round for many years. When I got sober at 19, my parents are Ivy League school graduates. I grew up on the Harvard Divinity School campus when my dad was at Harvard Business School, and I hadn't graduated high school. And so I had a lot of shame about that, which I placed onto them. I was like, you're ashamed of me. And they were not. They were like, this is so, my mom would say, this is so far beyond that. And what I would think was, oh, you're so far beyond, ashamed of me. And I eventually moved to Southern California, went to community college, got into UCLA, and put my life back on track. And my relationship with my parents and my family, I have 2 younger sisters, and through my parents and my sisters getting education, coming to meetings with me, getting education from professionals in treatment programs on their own, our relationships, all of them have completely repaired, and they are closer than they've ever been. I talk to my parents every single day. My siblings are my best friends, but to my sister, one of my sisters didn't speak to me for 2 years, and she didn't speak to me because she said, look, I've already buried you. I don't believe that you're going to stay sober. So she didn't speak to me until I had 2 years sober, because it was too hard for her. And my father and I ended up co-founding with another partner, a business together that has done very well. So he went into business with me. So that's probably pretty good, a review on how things are going. And I'm a drug and alcohol counselor. Last year, I went and got my MBA at Johns Hopkins in healthcare management. And I would say that all in all, things have been very successful. And they've been very, very difficult at times. And I've almost relapsed times. And so it's been a long full 16 years. The thing I want to touch on in this meeting, in this format is, I have this perspective that's very interesting, right? I have the perspective of having been the kid, having been the teenager, having gone to all the treatments, and then having been the sober young adult, and now being a parent and having the grandparents and talking to my parents and seeing. And one of the most terrifying and beautiful things that I see that has given me this feeling of grace is that I see the things in my children that I struggled with before I knew how to put words to them, and before I knew how to put substance substances to them. And we talk about them in my house, and we talk about feelings, and we talk about thoughts getting stuck in our head, negative thoughts. Mommy, I don't want this thought in my head. Why can't I get this thought out of my head? I keep thinking about this scary thing. And we talk about all these different things. And I see what I didn't know when I started using was that I have always been medicating for anxiety and fear and stress about a world that I could not explain. And that in some ways I understood too much about and didn't have the maturity to process the information. In many ways, I see that this is truly a disease that I was born with, my addictions came out of attempts to self-soothe that were very maladaptive. And when I look at that, when I look at my babies and I see them do these things and I see them have reactions, and my husband and I look at each other like, oh no, and what, we recognize the behavior. We recognize the fear of there not being, of pouring a glass of orange juice and there's not enough, how much orange juice is left in the bottle? And we're like, what? How much orange juice is left in the bottle? Yeah, Mommy, how much orange juice is left in the bottle? Can you put the orange juice right next to me so that when you pour it, I know exactly how much is in the bottle? I'm like, oh my God, that's what we did with alcohol. Like, there are so many things that have nothing to do with alcohol. It has to do with fear. It has to do with scarcity. It has to do with these ideas that we come up with. And when you see it in its purest form, which is in, small children who have no idea what they're doing, I have felt this grace for myself of having a lifetime of seeking comfort and seeking stress relief and seeking, nervous system soothing and all these things. And what it looked like for me was I needed and I found really strong chemicals to do that. And throughout my sobriety, I've struggled with sugar. I've struggled with food. I've struggled with relationships. I've struggled with sexual relationships. I've struggled with overdoing all sorts of things, overdoing Nicorette gum, just stuff where you're like, Ashley, for the love of God, what Nicorette, really? Like, that's where we are. And it's this compulsive anxiety piece that just desperately wants to be soothed and doesn't feel like doesn't feel like if I actually engage in the emotion that there's going to be a beginning, a middle, and an end. And in my house, we talk about how all feelings have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that doesn't mean the feeling won't come back, but the feeling has a beginning, a middle, and an end, because that's not something I knew until I was many years into sobriety. I was not willing to stop and just feel something really, really uncomfortable until many, many years in sobriety. And what happened was I was so uncomfortable and none of my coping skills worked anymore. None of them, not the hooking up with people, not sugar, nothing, none of it worked. And so I was forced to feel my feelings from start to finish. And that was when I learned, and many years into sobriety, that feelings had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's been a journey like that for me. I have a podcast where I talk about recovery. I have worked with hundreds, if not tens of, not thousands of people who are in recovery, in different types of recovery. I've been doing this a really long time, and my perspective on it has changed a little, but really the only piece that has changed drastically is my concern about the fatality of addiction these days. When I would have, if in early sobriety, and that I would have told you that I was not an abstinence-based person, that I wouldn't tell my kids to be abstinence-based, that that wasn't my, that I didn't believe that drugs were bad in and of themselves. And now what I see in addiction is much scarier. And I will say that for parents and for myself, that one of the things that's really hard is, most people, when I was doing drugs, most people didn't die from trying cocaine. That was tough. That was a tough thing to do. And now I see that. Now I see it happening, accidental things. And, to be honest, I don't always know how to guide people with that, because it's a different landscape that we're dealing with. But what I can tell you is that the addiction in and of itself is the same. It's the same from when I was a small child to now. It's the same. And for all the way from when Bill and Bob started the 12-step programs, it's the same. Addiction is the same. We are people who are trying to self-soothe something that feels so out of control in our bodies and our hearts. And my family is one of my greatest sources of strength. They come and celebrate my birthday with me, my sobriety. I would say that we celebrate my sobriety birthday much more intensely than my belly button birthday. Although my mother, I have to say this because she hates it. It's not your birthday, it's your anniversary. I get to own your birthday. I was like, okay, my anniversary. She's like, it's not your birthday. So my anniversary for my mom, we when I took 10 years and when we had huge celebrations, because that's truly abnormal. That's truly something different. That's truly, a person like me doesn't typically get long periods of sobriety. And many people that I got sober with are no longer sober. And it is normal for people like me to drink and use in order to self-soothe. That's normal. And I think that's a very difficult concept to absorb. I want to open up for questions because I want to be useful to people, but I want to end with this, which is that I have 2 little boys that I love more than anything in the world. And I truly have, being a drug and alcohol counselor, an interventionist, having done this for gazillion, just having basically been my whole life be about addiction. I still can't imagine what that would feel like. It I can't imagine what it would feel like watching my children do what I did to my parents. I can't, it breaks my heart. And I hope I never have to, but, and I don't know what I would do. And I know all the answers, and I don't know how many of them I would be able to implement. And I just, my hope is that, that anyone here who's struggling with loved ones or children who have gone through this stuff, that how incredible it is that you're getting help for yourself, and that what you're doing to help yourself, the education that you're getting for yourself, is absolutely invaluable. My parents being able to understand me at a level that they couldn't, not believing there was something so wrong with me, has made our relationship magic, absolutely amazing. And I cherish every moment I have with them. And I hope that that's something that you all get to experience. And my hat is off to you. And I look forward to coming to all of you for advice when I start to have the same struggles in my house. So thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley. As a reminder, our program, we actually don't give advice. We share our experience, like most 12-step programs. I know there's several questions and comments. Elizabeth is asking about your podcast. If you would like to share your email address in the chat, that would be the best way, since we don't promote outside organizations or activities. No problem. Anne is asking, what was your turning point, that one incident when you realized you needed to change? Please list some of the best things your parents had done that you were not resentful of during your addiction journey.
My turning point was I kept trying this alcohol experiment, and turned out I was an alcoholic. And because I kept ending up back at the drugs, and didn't matter and what I did, but it could take 6 months, but I'd end up back there. And the last time I was living in Prescott, Arizona, I had started drinking probably mid-year. I got some, shitty news at the end of the year. And I woke up one day and decided I was going to drive to Phoenix, which is a 2-hour drive, and get heroin. I didn't know anyone who had heroin. I just decided to do that. So I drove down there and ended up using dirty needles and got all the veins in both my arms infected, and lost my vision and my hearing and my vehicle, and ended up in some trailer park because, again, this is how this is what it looks like when I use. And I ended up in the hospital within 48 hours, and which is my sobriety date. And my mom flew to town and to see me in the hospital because my boyfriend at the time called her and was like, "Oh, you got to get out here." And I just remember my mom crying and saying, "Are you going to make me bury you? Like, what is, we had been doing this dance for years." And it was like the combination of that, like, and of course she had said that to me before, I'm sure, but it was a combination of hearing that and just feeling like, I just can't do this anymore. Like, I end up in the hospital in 48 hours. And like, it doesn't even work. It doesn't even work. I've given my whole life to addiction. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm not dying. That was my thing. I wasn't afraid to die. I was afraid to live in this middle space. And so the turning point was, I just was like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. I end up in the hospital every single time. And I didn't want to end up in the hospital anymore. And I didn't want to give another day of my life to addiction. I was tired of the washing, rinse and repeat cycle.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm glad you mentioned the various kinds of addictions. I keep hearing about California sober. I don't know if you've heard that expression. That is where if someone's addicted to heroin, they tell themselves they can still smoke weed or drink alcohol. And that works for some people, but not everybody agrees with that way of doing it. And there's a lot of comments that are coming in. You might want to read them. We're about to take a break. But I do want to mention, I'm also thrilled that you mentioned your siblings, because coming up at 10:45, we're going to have speakers from Narateen, and awesome. We'll get a better understanding of the fact that addiction is a family disease and it affects everyone at all ages. And some of the kids, some of your teens might seem to be doing okay, but they are struggling, and some are very obviously struggling too. And there are resources for them.
Yes, please get your siblings. Please get the children, the siblings help. Please. I got all of the help. I got all of the help, all the resources. And my sisters saw, they stuck around for all of the other stuff, and they witnessed it and went through their own stuff. So that was one thing I really wish my parents had done, is given more attention in terms of therapy resources, whatever, to my siblings.
I'm going to turn it over to Roxanne.
Thank you so much. Let's give Ashley a round of applause again. Thank you. I know I always appreciate when we have a guest speaker who is coming from the other perspective as an addict, because we can see it gives us hope so much that you went through and you found sobriety. And hopefully you hearing the stories of our other speakers will help provide you with some hope that if you do have to go down that path with your children in the future, that there is hope. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and take a break. We will start back promptly at 10:45. And with our next speaker, as Ken was stating, it will be our Narateen section, and then we have one additional speaker after them. So if you would like to go ahead and get coffee, take a break, get some water, use the restroom, stretch your legs, whatever you need to do. Again, we will start again at 10:45. All right, for anybody who's just joining, we have just about a minute left on our break. At 10:45, we will resume our program. And also, we will be sharing a link to the recording of today's program, and it will just be an audio recording, no video. And the audio recording will be posted on the Southern California region website, which would be available for anyone to access for future listening. All right, and with that, we are at 10:45. We are going to go ahead and resume our program. Next, we have our Narateen program. Ken is the Southern California Narateen Chair, and he is also the Vice Chair for the World Service Narateen program. His home group is the Chatsworth meeting, and he is going to take it over now.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy that we're including Narateen again for the second year. Last year was pretty successful. We had two wonderful speakers. And then this year I tried to get new speakers, and we had a couple of people lined up and somebody had to drop out, and then another person had to drop out. And now we have Jasmina is going to speak on behalf of the teens, but all of a sudden I've had several other people who've texted me within the last hour saying they want to speak. So I can't include everyone on such short notice, but I do want to point out a couple of people in the room as I do my share. And we will be hearing from the chair of the World Service Narateen Committee. Doris is with us this morning, and I'm thrilled to have her. She's also an adult facilitator. Narateen is coming to Southern California very, very soon. For those who are not familiar with the program, it is part of the fellowship as much as NarAnon is. It works pretty much exactly the same way a NarAnon group works, only this is specifically for teens who are sharing their experience, strength, and hope. I personally got involved in this program in Nar-Anon because I've had a lifetime of addiction in my family, but it started when I was a small child, when I was 10 years old, and into my teen years, my entire adolescence was disrupted by addiction in my home. I know today addiction no longer lives in my house, but I'm still a very active member of the program, in part because I'm still recovering, but also because I'm now a foster parent. And just about every child who has come into my house has come into my life because of addiction of one of their relatives that has led to neglect, abuse, and that kind of thing. And many teens, sometimes you will, as I said before, you will think they're doing very well, but most likely they're not. They are very aware of what's happening in their lives and in what's happening in their families. The addiction in their life could be a parent, it could be a sibling, it could be a friend, a boyfriend, girlfriend, even a teacher or a coach. And they feel very limited with who they can share their fears and their experience with. Other kids will make a terrible decision. They will use the if you can't beat them, join them theory. And they start using drugs or alcohol as well. I'm absolutely convinced that Narateen saves lives because it gives kids a healthier way to cope with the stress and drama in their lives. As Narateen progresses, just want to let everybody know that we have scheduled, because we're very close to launching it in California, we've had some administrative challenges and things like that, but in the coming weeks, we will be having, and I just have the dates in front of me, I will post it in a second, orientations for anybody who's considering volunteering to be an adult facilitator. An adult facilitator is somebody who helps make sure that the meetings go well. We usually have two adults who work with the teens, basically to ensure that they are following the 12 steps, the concepts and traditions of the program, and sort of keep things going during the meeting. It is not about the adults. The meetings are for the teens, but we're there to sort of guide them through. And we do need volunteers. Immediately following this Narathon today, I'm going to stick around for a couple of minutes to answer any questions folks might have about Narateen. But then we will be doing these orientations. I just had it in front of me. Yes, on the 24th of September at 10 a.m. That is a Saturday on the 28th, which is a Sunday at 6:30. This is not training. You're not obligating yourself to anything. It is simply a little extra opportunity to go through what Narateen is like and what it's like to be a facilitator. And you can go to our website in Southern California. The link is the same. We're going to use this exact same chat room so that it'll be the same link. So thank you all for being here. Before we get started with our teens, I do want to introduce you to Doris. Doris is the chair of the World Service Narateen Committee. She's been fearlessly leading us through all kinds of challenges. We've made a lot of progress. I also want to add one of the wonderful changes that's happening very soon. There are some Narateen groups that are not official. They haven't gone through all the registrations and all the things you have to do to ensure the safety of the kids. And we're finding them and we're encouraging them to let us help them become official so we can list their meetings on our websites. One of the new groups that should be joining us soon is from Colombia in South America. And what's so exciting about that is it's a Spanish language program, and they do have Zoom conferences as well. So in Southern California, we do have a lot of kids who are Spanish speaking who could benefit from that. As soon as those programs are available, we will be posting on the website. Thank you, Doris, for being here. I know you're also an adult facilitator, and I'm hoping you'll let us know a little bit about that experience.
Thank you, Ken. Can you hear me, everybody?
Yes, we can.
Okay, because my speaker hasn't been working lately, so I'm glad I don't have to wear the big earphones. I do want to thank Ken for asking, although I was like shocked because there was another member who was going to speak, and I am happy to fill her spot, but I'm nervous because I wasn't prepared. Anyway, my journey actually in Narateen started maybe with another, not maybe, but it did start with another 12-step program. And I learned from that program that Narateen was really, really important for the NarAnon program that I was involved with here as well. And as you can see on my screen, I'm from Ontario, Canada. And we had NarAnon, but we didn't have Narateen. So it really began for me trying to get the guidelines developed so that we could have that first meeting. And we did that. And we didn't have to invent the wheel because there were so many other regions who had already done the work for us. So it was just about, trying to research the local laws and to make sure that all of the details were there in the guidelines for keeping those meetings safe for the teens. And then we had it so that it was approved and registered with WSO, and we were able to start that first meeting in Ontario. And I was so proud of that, because I saw that need, when I was looking at or being there for the other teens and the other program. It was just so obvious that they just needed a space to be able to share openly and safely. And so we have that first meeting, and it's been such a rewarding experience for me because I sit in the rooms and I'm a trusted member, and it's quite an honor to be trusted by a teen who would feel confident enough and safe enough to open up and share everything that's on their hearts without judgment, without fear, and just to be witness to the growth and the changes, to see them go from possibly a scared, shy person to bloom, to be more confident and be more able to just the self-esteem, how it changes in them. And I am so proud of Jasmina being here. She didn't even flinch an eye when she was asked to speak. And so I'm really proud of her that she would step up and share her story with everybody else. I think the thing that I was going to say, because there was a couple of things that Ken touched on, and I don't have to repeat those. And so I just want everybody to remember that Narateens or teens are just younger versions of NarAnon members, and they've been affected the same way as we have been. And so they still need just what we have, feeling supportive, feeling supported, and not being judged, and being able to share what's on their hearts, and know that they're not alone, that other teens are in the room feeling the same way that they are, and feeling the same way that they've been feeling. And like I said, it's been such an honor just to be that person, to allow them to have that safe space. And as Ken said too, this is what we ensure, to make sure that for 1 hour, even if the rest of the day is not been really good, at least they know for 1 hour they have the peace and quiet and the safe space to share what's on their hearts. And that's the important thing. So yeah, and I guess Ken did say that I was the chairperson for the Narateen committee, and it was through the process of getting our guidelines in Ontario that I reached out to someone in the Narateen committee, and this person was so helpful in that whole process. And then she asked me if I would be interested to be a member of that committee, and I was just thrilled. I never knew that I was going to be the chair, but I certainly was excited to be a part of a committee that would work on growing the Narateen program worldwide, not just in any region, but worldwide. So with that, I'm just going to say thank you for listening, and I am excited to hear Jasmina's story. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doris. I want to point out that Doris is in Ontario, Canada, not Ontario, California. So we are a worldwide fellowship, and we're thrilled that you're here with us this morning. Jasmina, I know that I said I was going to play the recording first, but I do want to make sure you have plenty of time. So is it okay that, are you ready to share with us? Terrific. Jasmina is in Boise, Idaho. She, I believe, participates in one of the Canadian virtual groups. You can correct me if I'm wrong. She's been a member of Narateen since January of 2021. And we're just so thrilled to have you with us today. And I'm going to turn it over to you and remind anyone, if you have any questions specifically for Jasmina, you can put that in the chat. If you have questions about Narateen, I'll be staying after the program. And Jasmina, if you want to unmute, thank you.
So what led me to Narateen is my addicted loved one, that is my father. I've always been between some fights with my parents, in like he's calling my phone, and I have to go bring it up to my mother and have her talk to him, and then it just went from there. But I always questioned how I could help him, like how I can help him, how I can fix him or anything. And so I joined Narateen so I can figure that out. I listened to the meetings, and still gradually I found out that we can't help the addict. We can love him from afar. I was still scared and fearful of my meetings because I thought they would not accept me, or was confused about me, or like any thoughts that are negative. But I knew that slowly I would gradually not think that, and I did gradually not think that no more. They accepted me into their group. I was a part of it, and I loved going there every Monday around 4 o'clock, which it might be different times for you, but it was 4 for me. And I was happy to be on that meeting to see Doris and the others saying hi to me and talking to them. I was always like fear of my father, of him coming into the house or something, or him coming near us. But my grandma helped me during those times to calm and find serenity in my life. But I know now that I can still find serenity in my life and find calm with my mother and my grandma looking down from me above. if someone told me that I was going to be going through this much fear and afraid and sadness and scared and therapy and stuff from back then, I wouldn't sign up for that. But I already had to go through it, and here I am now talking on this meeting about my life. And mostly I would just love to thank Narateen for helping me get through everything. It was like a big step in my life to find Narateen. It was calming, and it's a place where I can have a good time and just have fun, not being afraid or anything. I'm done speaking now.
Thank you so much, Jasmina. I really appreciate it. With some of our guest speakers, they are sharing their email addresses in case anybody wants to chat with them. We can't ask Jasmina to do that because she is a minor. But if you want to contact her, especially if you're a fellow teen, SoCal Narateen at NarAnon.org. I put it in the chat. You can email me directly at SoCalNarateen at NarAnon.org, and we can forward that to her. I just can't share her email, but she can choose whether she would like to respond or not. I also want to point out that Jasmina also has a fan club here today. I know her mom is here, and I know that she has, I understand you have other people in the room who are there to support you and cheer you on, and we're just really thrilled that you're here. And you can see in the chat that her fan club is cheering her on as well. I know it's really difficult for most people to speak in front of a large group, but particular for teens who have never done this before. And I really think you did a fantastic job. Also want to point out that if anybody needs a meeting today, if you're a teenager, there's an Ontario meeting at 3 p.m. and that's available on Zoom. We're open at this time for any questions specifically for Jasmina.
This is Stephanie. Can you said 3, there's a meeting at 3, but is that what time zone? I would just, I would put that out there.
It says 3 p.m. Eastern. Let me see.
Hi, this is Nook Messance from Ontario, Canada.
Hello, welcome.
Hi, thank you. I was at the other conference until Doris said, there's Narateen members speaking at 2 o'clock. So anyway, I'm a facilitator, one of them, from Ontario here. And so if somebody wants some information, I put my email address in the chat, peacecorinne100 at gmail.com, and a Narateen member, of course, and you. But you can also find somebody else's email address on the Ontario website. There's a meeting at 3 p.m. and I'm facilitating, me and another lady, another member. So thank you for having the young lady today. Thank you so much.
I appreciate your being here. Most meetings, before you attend, you email the facilitators and they do a little screening to make sure you're actually a teenager for safety issues. I'm also going to take a moment to introduce you to Kiara, who texted me she'd like to say something. Kiara, if you could also give me your email address privately at SoCalNarateen at NarAnon.org, because I need to send you a release so we can include you in this recording. But Kiara is a teen member of Narateen, and if you have a little something you'd like to say, we can include you at this time.
Yeah, this is my first time doing anything like this as well. I think the main part of me joining Narateen, my therapist had recommended me it, and it just has really helped me a lot, because before I was introduced to this program, I thought that I was one of the only ones who had an addicted loved one, such as both of my parents, and my grandfather that I live with is an alcoholic. But I thought that I was the only one that had these family members that were struggling with addiction, and I thought I was weird for it, and I had never been introduced to any families like this besides mine. So whenever I was growing up, I thought me and my sister were out of the ordinary. But Narateen has really helped me because I found people that are in my situation or in worse. And it's just really helped me that I could chat with people and make friends that have been through what I've been through, So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kara. I really appreciate you being here. Which Narateen group do you attend? Which state?
It's Washington, I think. Karen is on here. She is one of the facilitators that used to be over it. You could ask her.
The Pacific Northwest region.
Yeah.
Terrific. That's one of the wonderful things that came out of COVID was our going online and being able to do virtual. It's brought a whole lot more teens in. A lot of teens have problems getting transportation to these meetings or getting permission to come. And the kids were just really thrilled that we did it online because they're much more comfortable with their gadgets than we are. And so it makes it easier. So when we launch in Southern California, we will most likely start with virtual meetings and then hopefully get into the in-person meetings. We do have a little time. So I do have a video that I'm going to play for you. Those of you who were here last year met Kimberly, who's also a Narateen member. She's out of New York City and I believe is participating in the Florida region. And we had a lot of connection problems with her last year. And so she did a recording in case we wanted to use it. So I'm going to share my screen so we can hear what Kimberly had to say.
Hi, my name is Kimberly. I'm pre-taping this video just in case I can't make it to the call tomorrow during work. So I told Ken that I would pre-tape something. I'm 16 years old. I am a junior in high school. I've been going to Narateen meetings. It's been a minute now. I want to say since maybe, I don't know, I want to say since kind of the end of last year. So I guess towards the end of this year, it'll be almost a year. I go when I can. I try to go weekly, but I have school and work and all these things. And if you all are watching this video, it's because I couldn't make it to this because of work. But I'm going to try to take a break and be on the call. So my mom is my qualifier. It's funny, I'm actually named after her, but the letters are switched in my name, so like I'm KYM and she's KIM. She is an addict. She's been an addict since before I was born. She's been an addict since she was, I think, younger than me, actually. I think she was like 15 when she first smoked crack. So it's a miracle she's still here. She's really on and off. I currently don't live with her. I live with a foster mom who's amazing and I love. And like I said earlier, I'm 16. I don't want to go back to living with my mom. And Narateen has taught me that that is okay and to put myself first. And I've learned so much about myself, kind of how I was taking care of an addict is like being a parent yourself, even though I am a child. My dad passed away and my mom was living in New York. I was living in Georgia. I live in New York now. So I moved up to New York with my mom after my dad passed. And it was okay at first. She was clean for a bit and then she started using again and she was, couldn't find her. She wasn't around too much. She'd tell me just like, don't come home, sleep at a friend's house. And I'd be like, okay, can I come get clothes? And she'd be like, no, like, you don't need clothes, you don't need anything, you'll be fine, like, don't do that, or whatever. It was pretty rough, honestly. And then I ended up I was with a close family friend for that week. I was with my friend, and then I moved with a close family friend for a few months. And my mom was just on and off during that time. Now she has, I think she said 11 months clean, which is really good. I'm very proud of her, but it's also like, you know, it's happened before, so I don't get my hopes extremely high. But other than that, I just, I go to these meetings really often. I try to go as often as I can. I have a sponsor. I'm working the steps. It's been really good for me. I'm really happy to have found Narateen when I did. I remember at my first Narateen meeting ever, I literally cried because I was so happy to be in a space with people who understood. And not only did they understand, they could tell me how they were getting through it. And that's just something that I feel like wasn't accessible to me before I found out that Narateen existed. I feel like I was constantly venting to people who wouldn't understand or wouldn't get it because, you know, they had two parents at home. And I'm not saying that it doesn't mean that they didn't go through things, but they had like a mom and a dad who were both healthy at home. And my dad passed and my mom's an addict. So it was good being in Narateen. It's really good still being in Narateen and having people to talk to about these things, friends who can relate and know what it's like to go home and like the lights are off and no one's there and not have anyone and have to sleep on your friends' couches and have to make up excuses to cover for the addict in your life. I have people who understand that now. I have a whole network of people who I know are there to support me no matter how the addict in my life is acting, because even when she's clean, it's still rough with my qualifiers. So it's nice because Narateen has given me so much, so many resources, so many people to reach out to. And for that, I'm really happy. I know that this video can be up to 10 minutes, but it's 5, and I don't want to make it too long. But that being said, this program's been really, really good for me. I think, honestly, it gave me so much hope. My first meeting that I was on, I was like crying of happiness. And through everything that I've been through with my mom, the last almost year or so, I know I've had Narateen there. I have the facilitators of my group. I have my sponsor. I have so many friends I've made. So I know that it's not going to happen overnight, but with time, I will heal from the distrust that, you know, the addict in my life placed in me and the exhaustion and the trauma. I know that I can work through it, and I have a lot of hope for that because of Narateen. So it's been a really, really important part of my life, and I thank you all for listening to me.
So that was Kimberly. I'm sorry the audio cut out. I had some background noise, and I thought if I muted it, that would help. I didn't realize I'd be muting her. She was mostly talking, I think, at that point about that she's in foster care, and she does have a strong connection with her foster family. But it has been a real struggle for her being separated from her family and having life uprooted the way it was. There are so many wonderful comments in the chat. I'm looking to see if there were questions for Jasmina, especially, or for Sierra or Doris or myself, because we still have a few minutes. Jasmina, I'll go ahead and ask. I know when I was your age and dealing with similar situation, I really felt like I was the only one going through this. And I wonder if you felt the same way, and what did it take for you to be able to open up and hear other people are going through this?
I hope I'm understanding the question correctly, but wait, what was the question again? Can you repeat it again?
When I was a teen going through this, I thought our family was the only one as messed up as it was. And, you know, I used to be really embarrassed with police coming to the house and all of that kind of stuff. And I really didn't understand that many other kids were going through the same thing. I'm wondering if you felt the same way, that you were perhaps just had really bad luck, and other families might not be going through this.
How I knew that I was kind of what I was going through, I thought like, oh yeah, I was going through this alone and stuff. In reality, when it was like first happening and sorts, I only talked to my grandma sometimes or my mother about it, like, what are we gonna do or something like that, or like, I want this to stop. How I soon learned about that we're not alone doing this is when my mom joined NarAnon, and then she told me about her program and everything, and that she was not alone. And sometimes I would just listen to her meetings sometimes and just sit there and just like, oh, we're not alone. And then I found out we had Narateen, and I'm like, wait, there's a meeting for teens? And then I joined that one, and I fully knew that I was not alone.
We had, oh, I'm sorry, continue.
In that program, I said.
In my household, I had a teenager, a foster child here. She was about 17, and she was really struggling with addiction in her birth family. And I let her sit in on one of my NarAnon group meetings, and she didn't relate to it. There was almost nobody in there that was under the age of, I don't know, 30. And so she just felt like everybody was going through something different from her. Do you feel it makes a difference for you? And I'll ask Kiara if you'd like to jump in on this as well, to be with peers, to be with kids your age who are going through something similar. Jasmina or Kiara?
I'm thinking about your question, like deep thinking about that one. When I was like, sitting with my mom or something, or just listening to her meetings, sometimes I would kind of relate to the situations that they're going through, but sort of not. I would just think like, okay, they're going through they have an addicted loved one, but it's their addicted loved one. Then with me, I had my addicted loved one, which was my father, and I just thought that if they had an addicted loved one and I could talk to them, maybe we can just talk stuff out or something, or see what's going on. Most of the case, when I talk to people sometimes, I usually don't open up. But when I saw NarAnon with my mom, she was opening up a lot. And I loved how we could like relate in some ways with NarAnon and Narateen or any group. Sometimes you can sometimes relate to things, but you sometimes have different flaws. I don't know what I'm writing right now.
No, that was a wonderful answer. Thank you so much. I think Kiara has moved on. Did you say that you have a sponsor? And I imagine you have a sibling with you right there. You're on mute, Jasmina.
Yes, I do have a sibling with me right now. She would have come join me in my room. Sometimes she comes in my Narateen meetings and just hangs out.
Well, hello, sibling. I'm sorry, did you say if you have a sponsor?
I believe I don't have a sponsor.
You don't have a sponsor. Kimberly also mentioned it's a little harder for teens to get sponsors because adults cannot sponsor teens. So you need a little experience in the program before you can become a sponsor. So one of the things that we have available, I just want to point out, and we can't see it on screen really, is the Narateen 12-step book, workbook, which is very similar to the big yellow book that we use in NarAnon for step study. But it's written a little bit differently for teens. It has more space to write your answers to various questions just for yourself. So I strongly recommend this, not only for the teens. I'm sorry, I can't get it on my camera. It's the Narateen 12-step workbook, but even for adults, It's sort of a shorthand. Thank you, Doris. I appreciate that. It's a shorthand. If you're not ready to do the big book, it's a shorthand way of getting started with working your 12 steps. And again, while we struggle to get enough sponsors for the teens, I'm also going to point out one of the wonderful things about the Narateen program is that the young people like Jasmina and Kiara and Kimberly are the future of the NarAnon program. They will be, finishing when they leave their teen years. Hopefully they will continue with NarAnon and move into the NarAnon program. And a lot of them will eventually become leadership and will be facilitating their own meetings or volunteering and doing things like that. So it's another reason why we work hard to support the Narateen program. It's because it's our responsibility to move it forward and make sure this program is here for the future generations. I see Jasmina says she does have this book. Great, I'm glad you do. Are there any other questions or thoughts? Elijah has her hand up.
Hi, I have a question. Hi, I have a question for Jasmina. Ever since you've been coming to Narateen, have you been able to carry the message to kids at school, or where you can kind of see or feel or know something's going on, and then you're able to share with them as well? Or because I just remember being a kid, I would stay isolated, and I felt like there's no way I can tell anybody anything about this, because I didn't know there was somewhere to go. But now I think back, and I remember certain friends, and I remember thinking because I've come across friends too where we're older now, and we're my dad was a heroin addict, my mom was a heroin addict, or my mom was an alcoholic, or this and that. So I was just wondering, has it helped you in school, or help somebody else in school or something like that? That's kind of my question. Thank you.
I actually have spoke in my school before, my junior high school. We were talking about drugs in my health class once, and I had a mental breakdown in that class, and they took me out of that class, and I told them I did not want to go back in that classroom until that lesson was done. But my health teacher asked me if I could share a little bit on what was going on in my brain that day. And I did. I recorded a video of me, and I explained what happened in my life on that video. And I told them about that I am in a program that helped me a little bit with finding out stuff. And after that teacher showed that video, I did have a classmate of mine who came up to me and asked me about the program, and I did tell them about it. And I don't know what they're doing today, but I know that they might have joined a Narateen group.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. And I see that Dottie, you have your hand up. Dottie, by the way, was a fearless leader of this Narathon committee for several years and now leads our outreach committee. So we're always thrilled to have you here, Dottie. And you're on mute.
My question is, we had a 20-year-old at our meeting, and she lives with her parents, and she's having problems living with her parents because she has a sibling that's an addict, and she feels left out of any information and loving from as much, much need that she needs from her parents. And I'm wondering, can 20-year-olds go to Narateens?
At 20, we're advising that they go to Nar-Anon.
Right.
than Narateen, because they are now legally adults, and we're trying not to mix people who are legally adults with kids, with minors.
Thank you.
Karen, welcome. I see your hand up.
Thank you so much. And I really, really appreciate having Narateen present. We really need to get the word out to more teens. I've been involved for quite a few years now trying to get Narateen up and running in the Pacific Northwest. And thanks to COVID, we got a Zoom meeting going. I love Zoom. Yeah, it was a hard, arduous, a tough thing to get a Narateen meeting going, because it's not the same as a Nar-Anon meeting because of the safety and the anonymity that needs to really be put into place for the teens. But I appreciate the teens that are brave enough to speak. I didn't realize that I had an issue growing up. It wasn't until my daughter became a drug addict that I found a program that helped me, NarAnon. But my heart went out to the teenagers, because you never saw teens at a NarAnon meeting. And I would go to the NA meetings and I would listen to all of those addicts in recovery. And I know that they had teenagers in their lives that had been affected by their drug use. And then I was able to reflect back to my childhood growing up. Alcohol was normal in my family. And my, drugs was, it impacted me much, much more, I think, than the alcohol did. But I think it was because I was so much in denial. Alcohol is not good. But that was my norm. And there are so many teens out there that have drugs as their norm, and they don't know that it's impacting their lives. And so, let every teen know that there are meetings out there for them. Find one that has a time frame and the people in there that they feel comfortable with, and please come. Thank you for letting us share too.
Thank you, Karen. I really appreciate it. Just pointing out that a reminder that there is a meeting for teenagers at 3 p.m. Eastern time, which is noon, starts in a half an hour. If you're a teenager who's interested, the email address is in the chat for you to get screened so you can attend that meeting. And also, again, thank you to Karen, because Karen has been helpful not only in her region and putting together Narateen, but she's reached out and helping other regions as well, including ours. So we really appreciate what the Pacific Northwest is really moving the message forward. And I see one more hand up from Narateen, and then I think we do have to move on.
Hi, thank you very much. You're talking about Nook Massage?
Yes.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to say that in order to start new Narateen meetings, we need to encourage one another. And you know what? It is possible. We need to create possibilities. As adults, we have tons of NarAnon meetings for ourselves. So encouraging one another that this can be done, getting facilitators to start meetings. I started a meeting here in Ontario, and I just encouraged other people from the region, from the other area, to just come and let's please do service work for the youth. So I just want to encourage anybody, please come. The next generations are very, very important. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And a reminder that I will stick around after the Narathon to answer any additional questions. We do have orientation meetings coming up for those who are interested in volunteering on the 24th and the 28th. And I'll just close the Narateen segment by saying I'm brimming with pride for Jasmina and Sierra and everybody who purchased. Thank you so much to Doris. You can see that one of the things that Narateen brings into the lives of these teens is an ability to advocate for themselves. She's somebody like Jasmina is so much better off because she can speak for her own needs now. And so thank you so much also, Roxanne, and to the Southern California region for including Narateen in this program.
Thank you so much, Ken. Let's give them all a round of applause. I know we are running just a couple minutes behind. Before I introduce the next speaker, I just want to make a final announcement. We will be wrapping in about 30 minutes or so. If you would like to make a seventh tradition contribution, please visit our website at naranonsocal.org. You'll click on the PayPal button. Please make sure that you put the name of your group and Narathon in the notes or memo section, so that way we can make sure that it gets credited to today's event and to your meeting. If you're unable to donate online, please text to Susan S., who is our treasurer, the amount of the check that you would like to mail, and then she'll reply back with the mailing address, and her phone number again is 949-872-3941. And with that, I'll go ahead and introduce our next and final speaker, which is Jill E. She's from the San Clemente area. She's been part of NarAnon for 2 years and part of NA for 7 years. So we refer to her as our loving double winner. And let's hand the floor over to her.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jill. I'm an addict and your double winner being in NarAnon, which was my second program. And actually, I should qualify as a multiple winner because I'm in a few other programs too, but I'm grateful for 12-step in general, for, growing up in program, learning some responsibility, accountability, living positively, in a positive mode. And, letting my higher power lead me, which is something greater than me, because, weakness brought me into my programs. It's not strength, it's weakness. And, together we get better together. So I will, my story begins with, just give a little background on myself. Happy childhood, loving family, being a bit spoiled because, my parents did everything for their kids, my brother and myself. And so I, at an early age, started feeling, oh, I can get what I want when I want it, and started learning being entitled to things. And of course, the beginning of, addict behavior where, I enjoyed material things, I'm never enough, never satisfied, always wanting more. And, my parents gave me what they could, and they definitely, we were all in a family business, so very close, but they protected me, they really, my mom was a little bit controlling, and they would just do anything for their kids. So I think in thinking back, I was pretty protected, but they guided me on a healthy path. And then, I did well in school, and, I would say I was the goody-goody until age 16 when, the gates broke loose. And I was introduced to, my drug of choice, which was marijuana. And I, continued on that realm for, many, many years, And I think not only using for escaping, it just, I think I always in my mind felt like, oh, things are better when you're high. Things are more elated. Things are more, things are just better. And I had a natural God-given talent of dance. I've danced from a very early age. And I always in my mind thought, oh, I'm freer when I'm high. I'm more creative. All the justifications that I told myself, to continue my use. And I got a dance scholarship to UCI, which when I moved out, it just kind of continued that wild kind of crazy lifestyle. So I met my husband to be at college, and, I was kind of having a pull between dance and relationship. And basically my last year of college, I was like, I decided I'm going to give up dance as a career. but because, oh, I'm not that cutthroat, fine artsy person to make it successful. But in actuality, I didn't want to give up my drugs. I wanted to continue taking the easy way out and not, having fun and partying and not getting serious and thinking, how am I going to, provide for myself and build a career. Was not interested in any kind of future because I took the path of least resistance. And go figure, my qualifier, who ended up being my son, also was very talented and, God-given talent in music and sports. And, he also, when he was young, just was very involved, very successful. Things came very naturally and easy to him, like me. So, and I think I started doing that protection kind of thing at an early age, wanting to control him and things that he did, just like my parents did with me. Because, we do what we know, and especially being an addict, I'm very closed-minded and small thinking and just used to what I'm used to. And so definitely, I kept my son from growing because I was always there doing things for him. And unfortunately, I things did not get crazy enough until they did with my life. And then I finally decided I needed change, I needed help, and fell into my first 12-step program. So I got clean, age 55. That's how long my bout was. And before that, my son, when also he hit high school, he started with the drugs. It went from marijuana use to pills, and it just took off, and we knew that we were in trouble with him because whatever my son focused on, he was good at, the sports, the school, the music, whatever, and very talented and engaging. And, when he got into drugs, boy, he was good at that. And he started dealing and he was living with us, and the chaos just began from that point. It was just kind of a crazy, stressful time between my husband and I and my son, because here I was using because I couldn't deal with, he was more involved in just pot, which for me, I was a functioning addict. I was still working and then using, and he was just kind of more out of control, where he went to the more harder drugs pretty soon. And I remember one point when he was 18, our house got raided, and that was the first bout, the first rehab that he went into after that through the courts. And that's the beginning of his story was, multiple rehabs, jail time, prison time, after breaking his probation. And that was craziness, living through that chaos, that drama, because our whole lives were consumed by him and his drug addiction. It took over our lives, because we wanted to still protect him. And yet we still, he was living in our house and bringing people over. And it was just, we had no control. But of course we didn't, realize that there was nothing that we could do. We were trying to protect him from, future havoc. And that didn't quite work. So, my first sponsor first suggested Nar-Anon to me. And I had been familiar with Al-anon a bit, before that, but I started going to this Saturday morning San Clemente meetings in Nar-Anon, and it was just a lifesaver to me, because here I wasn't alone. I was in a group of other people that can relate to their qualifiers. And I think at that point, it was almost even a focus of, having children, adult children or whatever as qualifiers. So I felt like at home. And so I'd go every week. And here I was going to like lots of NA meetings, in my first year of getting clean. That's what they suggest. Go to lots of meetings. And so I was going diligently, regularly to that Nar-Anon meeting. And it helped because I got to hear people with time and their experiences. And I just knew 12 steps, you take suggestion of people that have come before you in the program. If you don't know what to do and you're desperate and you're going nuts, just open your ears and listen and being willing to try new and different things. So that did open the door for a new way of life for my husband and I, because we realized then how much we were enabling our son, to continue with his use, basically, letting him live in our home, providing meals and a roof and, just letting him come in and out of that door freely. And when he couldn't drive, taking him places, being the chauffeur. Oh my goodness, it's like he relied on us. He knew we were always there for him, but we couldn't stop the drug use and we weren't helping. And I realized that in the NarAnon program. And there's one thing that they said that really hit home, that the message I heard was, your adult kids never grow up under your roof. Wow, what a concept. That stuck with me. He's never going to grow up under my roof. So we decided to kick him out. And what happened is we were living in a 3-bedroom home, and then we went to a 2-bedroom home, to a 1-bedroom apartment, because I I don't have a room for him. He's not going to cause chaos. He can't live with us. But what was I doing? I let him sleep on my couch. I took down my dining room table and put a mattress in my dining room and let him stay. So that's how crazy it was until we decided we're going to follow suggestion of others and see how this works. So we literally had a strong arm him out of the house, took away the key. When he would try to come back, my husband had a strong arm. No, you're not coming in the house. We are not a hotel. You can't come here and shower. You can't spend the night. You can't detox on my couch. We're not giving you money. And it's like, we realized that, we had to detach with love, as they say. We had to start being supportive for him if he wanted recovery, but he was never ready. He wasn't ready. And that's what I realized with, being an addict is you're ready when you're ready. You have to be desperate enough to be willing to stop and work a program and find a power that's greater than you to help guide you. And he was not ready then. And I was kind of torn between, being an addict, you want to always help an addict, and the NarAnon thing, which was detach with love. And I was like, what do you do? Well, I just realized what I had been doing and all the enabling didn't work. So I was willing to try, to be there for him if he chose recovery. And he did not at that point. And, my son actually says that by working a Nar-Anon program, my husband and I, that saved his life, because he was out there on the streets hitting his bottom finally. He had lost his job. He lost his girlfriend. He ran out of money. He had no place to live, nothing, and hit his bottom. And this is a boy that, had OD'd numerous times on hard drugs, on H. And and was brought back. And, you know, the fear that, oh my God, is he going to live or die for so long? But we had to like, knew he's got a strong higher power over him that he, you know, came back so many times. So we just prayed for him. We prayed for him. And he finally, when he had nothing left, you know, we let him stay at our place if he agreed to be on the county list for rehab, a county rehab. So this was the first time that he would be going on his own, not court mandated, on his own. And God help us all, within a few days, even though there's a waiting list, he got that phone call, there was an opening, and he went to the county rehab. So, and from that point, he was clean and has been 6 months behind me in clean time, 6.5 years clean today. It's a miracle. And he said, if I didn't get clean ahead of time and start, you know, like living a new life and setting an example and stopping the enabling and letting him hit his bottom, he said he would be dead today. So I am so grateful for working Narathon and being open to a new and different ways, stopping the enabling, because it not only saved our lives, the consumption with him being an addict, but it helped him hit his bottom. And eventually, you know, he was ready. He got a sponsor, started working a program, and just kept clean ever since by working a program. Went from like 100 days in his first rehab to 1 year of sober living. That's what's recommended. And in a program, they follow what's recommended, you know, follow suggestion, that thing. And then from there, he moved into an apartment with another clean person and just disassociated completely with other addicts, using addicts, that is. And that's what you have to do. They say in all programs, how does it work? You have to be willing to do whatever it takes. Like give up everything that is what you're used to and what you're comfortable with for something different and something greater. And so I'm grateful today. I mean, he just had his 32nd year birthday. He bought his own home in Mission Viejo, lives 10 minutes from me. He runs his own business. He just got married and has got puppies and is a responsible dad to the puppies. It's like, it's a miracle. And I'm grateful because not only I said, you know, I saved my life, I inevitably saved his life too. So in general, just I am so grateful for working my programs and working the steps and applying these principles in all my affairs. And, you know, one thing that I'm constantly working on more recently is realizing, you know, with relationships, my defects of character definitely come out. Like I still want to control. I still am, you know, that perfectionism self, wanting to tell other people the way I think it should be. But, you know, that just causes havoc in my life today because I realize the only thing I can change is myself and my reactions to things. So it's kind of like that work in the Serenity prayer, going into action to do what I can, realize what I can't change, which is another, and surrender the rest. So, you know, today, like with my husband, I'm grateful he's on here supporting me. He was in the middle of all the chaos and the craziness between a few addicts in the home and, you know, working Nar-Anon with me and, you know, has been my rock through everything. I just want to be more kind, loving, and considerate to him because that's what he deserves, you know, and learning how to, you know, build our relationship together. And my son, that strongly suggesting mode that I always want to be with my son, even though he's an adult and has his own life. I heard something lately and I've got to keep it at the forefront of my mind when my son calls me to talk. I love this. It says, are you looking for feedback or just love and support? So like I could get a feel for, does he want my feedback or am I just there to support him? And that's like a totally new outlook. I think that's healthy for me to focus on with my son. Let him live. He's got a strong higher power above him today and found God. And, I'm just grateful for, all of us being in recovery in our family today. We're blessed. Yeah, just the whole thing about, it doesn't even have to be an addict. It could just be like with my job, being insecure and wanting to be people pleasing and, letting my boss and others at work affect me. I got to let that go. I have to show up at work and just be of service and be the best that I can be towards my company. Not, oh, I gotta, do this and that and be appreciated and, just other things that how I used to think about work. So I'm grateful for, working the steps today. And, my life has been unmanageable. I will always be an addict, but, working Nar-Anon, I get to constantly work on that self-care today, things I can control or not. And, realizing that there's something greater out there with step 2. I have faith that I don't always know the best thing to do. My higher power is in my life to help me and guide me. Giving up my will and my way in the 3rd step is healthy, like letting God guide me through things. And my higher power today is, what's the best thing for Jill? What's the right thing to do? Because my God, I had my whole life of doing not the healthiest things, choices. And, being willing to work the inventory in the 4th and 5th step and share it with another, my goodness, I clearly got to see my defects of character, my, my fears out there with like my son and, trying to protect him from things in his life. But, that can kill me. So I have to let that go, and focus on what's healthy for me today, and he wants to be independent and with his life and he doesn't call me enough and, oh, that resentment. No, I have to just be in gratitude for I'm here when you need me kind of thing, and the relationship that we have today. Step 6 and 7, realizing my assets and my defects and, just having faith that, God help me with being teachable today and being humble that I'm a work in progress. I will never stop wanting and needing to grow and change. It's a blessing, making amends, just trying to be, making up for past wrong decisions by living amends today, living the best I can and having healthy relationships today. 10th, 11th, the 12th step, just, am I kind, considerate, and loving today? Am I helping another today? Am I building a strong connection with my higher power today? Taking time for prayer, meditation, that's all like self-care. That's downtime that I need to schedule in my day. I work full time, have multiple programs, sponsees, and, really trying to figure out a healthy balance with life and recovery and being of service. Like I have purpose today in the 12th step, giving back my experience and helping others gives me purpose today. I have more purpose in my life that brings me satisfaction than I have ever had in my whole life. My life has completely changed with program. And it's like a weight off my shoulders, me not having to control things today, and letting my higher power work today. So, and staying positive and continually growing. So that's, I think, all I have today to share. Grateful for asking me to share everything with you guys, and hope I've said a few messages that you can relate to, and that helps. Thanks, guys. I'm open for any kind of questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Jill. We really appreciate you sharing your perspective. Do we have any questions for Jill? Luz, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for sharing, Jill. I wanted to ask you, what helped you, I guess, stop smoking marijuana? Did you just kind of do it cold turkey? Did it take a while? I'm just super curious because I can relate. Thanks.
Yeah, I was pretty much a chronic pot addict for like 39 years, daily use. And, first it was using for fun and, around my commitments. And then, this is a progressive disease, any drug use. So of course it got worse to, first thing in the morning I had to use, and like the alcohol went from wine and beer to, double vodka. So it's progressive. And so, yeah. And once I realized that it was chaotic and I needed help, and I, realized that I didn't like the person I had become, I got desperate enough that I needed some change. And the 12-step program is, the only way for me to go. And, as setting an example, help my son inevitably too.
Thank you so much. We did have a question in the chat regarding the county list rehab. In the chat, and then maybe Anne can follow up with you directly regarding that.
Yeah, I would just say, check online for, county websites on how you can, get on the waiting list. It's free, versus all the other rehabs that cost a bunch of money, or you could use through insurance or whatever. They're ready when they're ready for that. So, but it's all good, because once they can detox and get the drugs out of their system, they have a chance for the beginning of some clarity, but they do need to be ready for that. Yes.
Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and give Jill another round of applause. Thank you so much for sharing. We are at the end of our program. We're going to go ahead and start wrapping up. I would like to thank all of our speakers for being courageous and open enough to share their stories with us here today. Thank you again to the committee for putting on such a successful event again. For all the participants for coming and attending and supporting the event and our region. Last year, we raised just over $2,900. So far, we have an estimated of $2,730 that we have raised. So we're just shy of how much we raised last year. So keep those donations coming in. I posted in the chat the information on where you could do the 7th tradition donation as well. Just a last couple announcements. New literature is always being added onto the World website, so please make sure that you visit the nar-anon.org site and check that out. With that said, they are always trying to produce new literature, and that's only possible if members such as yourself submit writings. So you can submit those writings to the litcom at nar-anon.org. The process is listed on the website, and if we can post those in the chat. When you go to the literature page down at the bottom, it'll give you the guidelines, and it also has the release form available that they will require for writing to be submitted. We will have an audio recording of today's event posted on our SoCal website. It'll be available probably within a few days. We'll have to do a little bit of editing to it. So as soon as it's available, we'll have it posted on there so you can go back and listen again if you had a favorite speaker or anybody that you would want to listen to again. or if you missed a portion of it. If you are a visitor and you're interested in attending a Nar-Anon meeting, you can find meetings at our SoCal website as well as the World Service site, and we'll post both of those in the chat for your easy reference as well. We will stay on for a little bit after the program is officially concluded. So if you have any additional questions, I know Ken will be on in case you have additional questions regarding the Narateen program. With that, I'd like to say again, thank you. And this concludes our meeting. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your Saturday.
This has been the Southern California Nar-Anon Family Group's 2022 Narathon event, Finding Serenity. The hosts were Southern California Regional Chair Roxanne and Committee Member Ken. The adult speakers were Allison, Jason, Ashley, and Jill. The Narateen Fellowship was represented by SoCal Narateen Chair Ken and World Service Narateen Chair Doris, and the teen speakers were Jasmina, Kimberly, and Kiara. If you'd like to find a group meeting to attend, please visit our website at naranonsocal.org/find a meeting. Our meetings are free, and the only qualification for membership is that of the addiction of a loved one. And as a reminder, this event was intended to be a fundraiser for the Nar-Anon Family Group's Southern California region. Please visit our website at naranonsocal.org and click on the Donate button on the homepage. Use the Comments dialog box to indicate if you are donating to our Narathon fundraiser. If you are donating on behalf of a group, please also include your group ID number and meeting name. And remember, keep coming back. It works if you work it, and it won't if you don't. So do it because you're worth it.